welcome back to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. I guess I should have started out with howdy, because in today's episode, I'd like to introduce you to a Jewish country singer, Joe Buchanan. Texas-born and Southern-raised, Joe Buchanan makes country music that is steeped in Torah. Having struggled with religion and his place in the world, a revelation from his wife about her Jewish identity changed everything for Joe. Joe decided to go through a Jewish conversion process and dedicate his career to Jewish country music. After joining the tribe, Joe released his debut album, Unbroken, which sparked nationwide tours, an original Shabbat service, a thriving online community, and a workshop about the choice to become Jewish. His latest album is titled Back from Babylon, and you can check out all his music wherever you listen and get more information about him in general at joebuchananmusic.com. So I found out about Joe through my brother Daniel. Daniel had sent me one of Joe's TikToks and said, "This is a guy you want on your podcast." And I couldn't agree more because Joe is truly a people Jew wanna know. Before this, I didn't even know there could be such a thing as Jewish country music, and Joe's stuff honestly slaps. I really like it. In this episode, you'll learn all about Joe, his life, his work, and his passions. We talk about his conversion process, how he feels being part of the Jewish community, and his take on everything post-October 7th. I'm so proud that Joe is part of our people. I really feel like he understands the essence of being Jewish, and he really cares about improving our community, which he has already, and tremendously. In the episode, Joe made a really spot-on comment that in our community, some people think of conversions as taboo, and they really shouldn't be. And hearing Joe talk about his experience and how much it means to him is really cool and only gives me more admiration and pride to think of him as part of the Jewish people. What really stood out to me about hearing Joe speak is how he continued to highlight that we are a family, we're a tribe, a people, that we're all connected. And I think it's more important than ever to remember just that. It reminded me of a time when I used to teach Hebrew school in Philadelphia. And at the end of the school year in May, the rabbi held a service. And then when they brought out the Torah, the rabbi had all of us get into a huge circle and we unraveled the entire Torah scroll together and each one of us held a part of it. Imagine like a circle of nearly 100 people holding a piece of this massive Torah scroll from the very beginning to the very end. So then the rabbi went around and pointed out all of the different parts of the Torah where we have the famous stories that we know and love exactly in the scroll. He'd come up to one part and say, this is where Joseph interpreted the dreams. And then this is where Nachshon fearlessly went into the Red Sea before it parted. And I barely kept myself from crying. I didn't want to get tears on the Torah scroll, but it was just a really beautiful experience, one of the most beautiful that I've had in Judaism ever. And hearing Joe speak brought that whole memory back. Every week, we hear from all sorts of people on the podcast, some more cynical, some concerned about our future, and some sad. But this episode is the true embodiment of Jewish joy and pride, and I'm excited to share it with you. I did tell Joe this, and I will confess it here too, but I actually only recently learned that Southern is pronounced Southern and not Southern. And by recently, I mean like a year ago. Being an English as a second language person, I always default to pronouncing things exactly how they are spelled. And I guess for decades, no one had the guts to correct me. And the way that I found out that I was pronouncing the word wrong this whole time was like a top 10 embarrassing moments of my life. I was at an improv comedy show in Seattle with my friends, and one of the comics asked for suggestions of accents. And really loudly to the whole audience, I yelled, Southern. And everyone burst out laughing. And the comic was like, Southern? That's a new one. We'll take it. And then at the end of the show, my friends had to explain to me that it was Southern and not Southern because I was genuinely confused. I was like, why is everyone laughing? Everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's like people in Texas speak that way. So with that said, please enjoy hearing from our Southern guest, Joe. Hey, Joe, welcome to People Jew Wanna Know podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing better now. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. I'm really excited to chat. And without further ado, tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, so my name is Joe Buchanan. I'm a Jewish country music artist here in Houston, Texas. And I joined the tribe 10 years ago when I found out my wife of 13 years was Jewish. That's not why I joined the tribe. Maybe I'll tell you that story later. But Judaism changed my life, brought me back into my life, and it opened up the world, and it just did so much good. It was so much healing. I started writing music about all the things I was learning. And, I thought, well, if this does so much good for me, maybe it can do some good for others as well. And now we're almost 3 albums in, and it's been a wild experience. It's been a different life. That's for sure.
So why did you convert to Judaism?
Yeah. Do you want the Reader's Digest version of that, or do you want the whole thing? It's kind of a wild story. So I grew up with a very simple idea of God. My grandfather and my grandmother, who raised me till I was about 6, it really taught me that, you can see God in the world and kind of in creation, and you can see, God in the goodness of other people. And I remember thinking as a kid, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense to me. By the way, they didn't go to any churches. They certainly weren't Jewish. And I remember asking, what does God want from me? And they were like, well, live a good life. That again made sense. So when I moved in with my folks, I was about 6, and we started, I wanted to go to places. My parents were like very not supportive of any kind of organized religion. So I would stay the night with my friends on Saturday nights, but it meant you better bring a change of clothes because you're going to church in the morning. And so I went to all these different churches. My friends went to so many different places. I had friends who went to a Catholic church, Southern Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist, just all of it. And I kept hearing these things that were really brand new. The idea that I wasn't good enough for God, that I was damaged goods, that I had this weight on my soul that was going to drag me down to this terrible place that God had made. And, I couldn't know God until I did one thing. And all the stuff that I had learned and that made sense to me, I was told was incorrect. And I was pretty rebellious. I found out some things. I found out you can't raise your hand in the middle of mass to ask questions. That's not appropriate. And it turned out when I was a guest at Sunday school, you couldn't really ask questions then too, but I needed to know some stuff. But eventually you hear that it's just something wrong with you, or your faith's not strong enough, or, maybe this isn't for you. You just keep hearing that enough times that we have this phrase, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm the issue and I'm just damaged goods. And that's kind of how that is. And so not a great thing to learn, especially when you got a lot of adults around you telling you things like, hey, what's wrong with you? Why do you keep, messing up? I almost said a bad word. I apologize. Why do you keep messing up and doing all this stuff? And so I just took ownership of it, which nobody's fault. It's just what happened. But fast forward, I'm working in a gaming store. We're selling board games and Dungeons and Dragons. And we didn't get a lot of customers. In walks this lady, and I lost my mind. I completely lost my mind the moment I saw the lady to be my wife. And I just knew I needed to meet this person, and I couldn't have told you who I was. All reality left. And thankfully, she came up, and this lady goes, Joe, this is April. April, this is Joe. And Joe plays guitar. And I said, yes, I do. Which, I was so silly. And I said, can I play you a song? And she's like, sure. Which, by the way, a terrible thing to ask anybody. But I played her a tune. We fell crazy in love, not because of the music, but then we got married very quickly. And she started going with me to some places. I was like, I want to find out about God. I want to figure God out. And she's like, sure, I'll go with you. So we'd go to these churches. She wouldn't sing anything. She wouldn't take part in anything, which I thought was wild. And she's like, I'm just here for you. Finally, we stopped going because I'm the only one doing it. Still having the same issues I had before. This is a long way around the barn to get to the front door, but I'm getting there, I promise. Fast forward 13 years into our marriage, we're at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And we're standing outside. We've just gone through. We're both shaking. And she looks at me and she says, I want to get in touch with my people's faith. And I said, what are you talking about? What? Who are your people? And she's like, I'm Jewish. And I said, hold on. When did you get Jewish? And she's like, I was born Jewish. And I said, you can't just be born Jewish. And she's like, I'm like mansplaining to my wife, right? I'm like, you can't be born Jewish. She's like, that's how it works. And I was like, wow, I don't know if you know how it works. She's like, I don't know if you know how it works. I was like, that's true. And she's like, by the way, our son's Jewish. And I said, what? I said, does he know that? And she's like, maybe not. This is a very true story. It's completely wild. And I said, look, why would you think I knew you were Jewish? And she goes, because my mom is Jewish. I said, yeah, I didn't know that just made you Jewish. And she's like, I have a Star of David necklace in my jewelry box. I'm like, yeah, but you don't wear it. You never told me this. For folks who grow up outside of Jewish communities or don't have that experience. That concept of it being passed like that is a wild concept. It's not a thing you see most places. So I said, look, all I know is there's something about pork. That's it. And I thought I knew a bunch of stuff. I tell you what, I knew nothing. I was like Jon Snow. I knew nothing. I didn't know. The only thing I learned about the Jewish people growing up was 2 weeks in history class. I live in Houston, Texas. We have the largest conservative synagogue in the country. Never met a Jewish person in my life that I know of, ever. Never saw a Star of David or a synagogue, a shul, a temple. They're all back in the neighborhoods. So I had no clue. I didn't know Judaism was even an existing religion, if that tells you how little I knew. As an adult. So we find this rabbi in Houston. He's 20 minutes from the house at this little synagogue. And that's the whole reason we went, because it was close. And so we walk in the door and I said, hi, my name is Joe. This is my wife, April, son, Nathan. They're Jewish and I'm not, and none of us know anything. And he kind of looked at me, and he goes, you want me to sum it all up? I said, yeah, that'd be great. He goes, all right, here's the deal. And he looked just right at me and he said, there's one God. And there's nothing wrong with you. He said, you do good stuff because it puts more good in the world. That's the reward for doing good, is the good you see. He said, it's not about what happens later. It's not about fear or punishment or anything later on. He goes, or reward. It's about right now. You're living in a gift. This is the gift, and you have to take care of it. Take care of you. Take care of those around you. Help take care of the world. And he said, and you're loved by your Creator exactly as you are. You don't have to do anything at all to be loved by God. It's already done. It's done. And I was like, it was like talking to my grandparents again. It was like 30 years of therapy all at the same time. It was like a weight just gone. And I said, well, I want to do this. How do I do this? And he was like, be here Wednesday. So, it took quite it takes a while to go through the process, but that's how I got here. That's the whole thing. And my son, I expected him to, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I told him, I said, this is yours. You're already part of all this, but you have to figure that out, what you're going to do with it. April and Nathan both went through the conversion process with all the classes with me because they wanted to learn. Yeah, it changed our lives. It absolutely changed our lives. So it was a good thing.
This is absolutely amazing. How long did it take you to go through the conversion process?
Well, we started about in the middle of another class, near the end of another class. The rabbi was like, well, we've got a class going on. You don't need to do it. I was like, no, let's do it. So we learned some things even more. It was great. It took about a year and a couple of months. And, you go through the whole cycle, through the whole process, ask all the hard questions, find out all the stuff, and go through all the celebrations, very involved in the synagogue life and in the community. And yeah, it was great. It was absolutely
great. And you're
great.
even touring synagogues. I looked on your website. You got like a tour of the synagogues of the U.S.
Yeah, full time. I didn't expect that I would be doing this full time. It started, my rabbi was very encouraging about, he knew I wrote music just for myself. And he was like, well, want to hear some of the songs you're writing? I was writing tunes about things I was hearing in services and learning. He really encouraged it. I met some folks who were real supportive. And then other people were like, hey, come do this over here. Come do this over here. And, next thing you know, we're taking actual bookings, and I'm trying to figure out, well, how do you even do that? And now we've got a couple of albums, and I'm a full-time touring artist in residence. So typically 3 weekends a month, I'm in a different community all around the United States. I do a down-home country music, original country music Shabbat service that we build with the community. I do Torah study Saturday morning, concerts, Havdalah, and then visit the Sunday school and fly on home afterwards. So yeah, it's turned into a full-time thing. And we have an online community, which I also did not expect to happen, but we started one up. So really they started it, I should say.
That is awesome. Yeah. I want to go back to your conversion journey for a second.
Sure. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Ask, when you went through the conversion process, what do you think surprised you most about Judaism and the Jewish way of life?
I think the thing that really surprised me the most is the rabbi who led the process is a comparative religion scholar. And one of the things that was so important to him was going, this is what you may know and be familiar with. And although we can teach you all about the holidays and what we do and who we are, and we study Torah together and all that, it's so important to understand what the differences are. That there are these key, unique differences that are fundamental to a certain belief system. We're very different in our approach. And so I think that was the stuff that really surprised me probably the most, and was also really encouraging. I'm super open to learning new things. And when I sit down to go through stuff, new information that comes in, I'm usually like, cool, yeah, that's that. And I just accept it, but seeing just how different was really cool. It was really beautiful. And we wrote some songs about that. On the first album, we have a song called Unbroken, which became the title of the album, which is all about some of those differences. But that's probably surprised me the most. Really did.
So would you consider yourself conservative now, or do you even identify with a denomination?
Oh, that's a great question. So I had a conservative conversion, and the truth is that it could have been any type of synagogue, shul, temple. It was the rabbi that drew us in, and we have such a deep relationship, a beautiful relationship with this rabbi. But it could have been a reform shul that we walked into and connected there. But I will say that over the course of several years and touring, and I try to spend a lot of time and study with the clergy while I'm there in the community. So I've adopted all these different processes now that are part of my own practice. So I heard someone jokingly call me an under-constructionist, and I kind of like that. But there's a lot of conservative reform practices that I've taken on. There's some things I do that sort of echo orthodoxy. Yeah, it's just a lot of different stuff. It's just sort of become my approach. So I don't know how you would classify me. I really don't. And I'm not trying to be vague about that stuff. My wife very much enjoys a lot of conservative Judaism and those practices and the way those services are done. I'm kind of all over the place. We work it out just fine.
I got you. And when you were telling your story and you mentioned that the rabbi explained that there's nothing to repent for, and that you don't have to have your sins forgiven in your life. It's like he was preaching to the choir, because it's like he understood intuitively that was your baseline of understanding. And probably it's very strategic of the rabbi to use the comparative approach, because he probably understands that people living in Texas, where Christianity is so predominant, they are used to having a baseline of knowledge on Christianity, but not necessarily knowing how it differs from other religions. It's a very strategic and smart approach.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he knew exactly what the first thing to say is. The right person is the right person, and the wrong person can change everything. I'm so thankful that's where he started. And it was huge. One of the things about Rabbi Federo is he does a lot of counter missionary stuff in that he wants to, make sure that folks who are Jewish have a lot of knowledge about what are these differences. It's important that because people, especially, at least throughout the South, and I'm not sure how prevalent it is in other places, but will come to the door, to want to talk to you, to get you to convert and all this stuff. And he's like, it's important that we're knowledgeable about those things. So he also gets a lot of folks who are part of some of these other communities that are Christian communities that do a lot of things that they think are Jewish. And, they like to say that they are, and they call themselves Messianic, and they'll come to the synagogues on Friday night wearing taluses. I've seen some of them come in with a shofar, and it's like they only know what they know. And he takes it as his job to say, I want to help set the record straight and at least be available to answer their questions. So he does that all the time in a very loving and open door, really non-judgmental way, which is really hard to do also, to not come across judgmental. But he takes it from the standpoint of, you only know what you know, and most people don't have an opportunity to just sit down and talk with a rabbi. Those in the Jewish community, we're like, we talk to rabbis all the time. But he's like, most people don't have that opportunity. And they have questions that may be uncomfortable to ask. And he's like, ask anything, and I'll do whatever I can to answer well. So I love that. I love that about him. But yeah, it's good he started there.
You bring up a good point about Jews for Jesus and Messianic Jews, because maybe in places where there's a lot of Christianity, that's more likely to happen. Because you're also saying there's a big Jewish community in Houston, which means that the likelihood of the overlap is higher. And I wouldn't have thought of that. So fair point you make. I accidentally went on a date with a guy who is a Jew for Jesus, or a Messianic Jew. And I nearly had a heart attack. I don't think I played it off well. This is a long time ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, it was embarrassing for me.
I get booking requests from people, but because I also do talks and workshops and things like that. But I've had communities reach out that are part of that movement. And they're like, we'd love to have you come and do a service or a concert. And I always go research everybody that reaches out before I reach out back to them. And I've had to go back and say, thank you so much for reaching out. I don't know that it's not appropriate really for me to come and do a service there. I could do a concert. However, please be aware that my views on what you do are very different from your views. And I feel like it's probably not a good fit. That's not something that I believe in or subscribe to. However, if I do a show somewhere, y'all are invited, and I'm happy to just come do a concert for people. But the things that I sing about and the things that I say, I think will run counter to what some of your beliefs are. So I try to be very, thank you so much. I'm not trying to offend them, but I do try to be clear. These are two different houses. We could be great neighbors, but they're definitely different houses, and that's okay. That's okay.
Makes total sense. And as you've traveled around the shuls all over the country and you've met the various Jews, what did you learn?
Well, so the amount of commonality is such a beautiful thing. I've never felt like a stranger in a Jewish community. I have felt like a stranger in my own life for ages. But ever since doing this, whenever I go into a new community and I don't know anybody there, usually sometimes meeting clergy for the first time and certainly meeting the community for the first time, it always just feels like, hey, this is more family I haven't had the chance to meet yet. So good to meet y'all. And you get to know people, and whatever challenges come up, that's just people, and that's okay. So that's the thing, is how much we all have in common, the things that are important to us. And and it's just really been a beautiful experience. There is such a thin wall that separates all of our different traditions that we have within our beautiful tree full of many branches. There are very thin lines that separate us. And so I try very hard sometimes I try to build as many bridges as I can to be some sort of support for this common thread, and also open up a door too for people who are curious about who we are and what we do. It's one of the approaches for the music that I do, is that I love country music and I grew up on it. And there's a lot of people I've met so many people who are Jewish. They're like, I love country music, but I didn't feel like it was for me. But now I do. So anyway, I think the things we have in common, those bonds, those threads, it's kind of beautiful.
I do have a follow-up on that.
Sure.
The shuls that you tour at, are they mostly Ashkenazi or Sephardic shuls?
A lot of Ashkenazi shuls. I've been in quite a few places that have some Sephardic practices. It's amazing how many. I've definitely met a lot of Sephardi Jews and done some things with them, both inside and outside the synagogue, when people have gatherings in their backyards or, different get-togethers or things like that. It's funny how many shuls will do things that are of a very Sephardic nature, and it's just been their tradition for so long that it's not even something that they think about or realize, from whether it's pronunciation or, a certain way of doing things. But yeah, it's kind of mixed all over the place. And the same thing with denominations too. Like, I'll be in a conservative shul one week, a Reform, temple the next week, a Reconstructionist place over here. Then I'll be with the Orthodox doing Lag BaOmer in someone's backyard. It's just somewhere different each week.
So you brought up your music. How did you actually decide to write music that dealt with Judaism? And then what are the themes or the motifs that you incorporate from Judaism into the actual songs?
That's a beautiful question. When I started writing music, I didn't know that Jewish music existed. I didn't know it was a thing. I mean, all I knew was Shalom Aleichem Malachem. I only knew the liturgy that we were singing on Friday nights and Saturday mornings and during the week. I didn't know there were musicians out there making the stuff. And I started writing music to help me understand things on a deeper level. Why do we sing this prayer? What's the significance of it? What's the kavanah in it? Why does it matter? Like, really deep diving to help me understand it. I was hungry for knowledge on all this. And it felt like there was a deeper understanding that was just out of reach. And so I used music to help me reach that and figure out what it means to me. And in doing that, there were all these different themes I wanted to explore as well that are, some of those counter concepts from different cultures, right? So like, we wrote a song about Eve that was all about how Eve is this hero and didn't bring awfulness to the world. And so we wrote this love song for Eve. That was this beautiful, when God made you, it was not a mistake, and creation was good. And so I would write about themes that I felt were important to talk about, like really important to talk about, and different approaches to prayer melodies that sort of echo what I was feeling when I would approach that prayer. And as far as the country music side of it, that's the music I grew up with. I grew up with old country, a lot of classic rock. It's what my wife and I dance to all the time. It's our favorite music. And ultimately, it's about people, their stories, their struggles, their celebrations. And so when I started writing, it's just kind of where my heart went. And it felt like such a good fit, and it felt super real, super authentic. And it's something that since I started doing it and really started doing it professionally, I never want to lose any of that authenticity. So I don't have any problem with people who do like satire or parody. I think there's definitely a place for that. It's a beautiful thing. I don't have any of that in what I do. So anytime that you hear, some pedal steel or a song that sounds like a country song that I'm doing, it's because that's what I want to make. Now, I don't want to echo it. I want to do it. And I want it to be super, super, super authentic. So I work hard on that.
So before I ask you my next question, I wanted to tell you that you and I live in completely different Jewish realities, only because you are in the South and I am in New York. And this is really important to understand. So for context, my whole childhood is in conservative Jewish spaces in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The way in which I experienced Judaism is through the paradigm of music, because all the summer camps, all the synagogues, all the services are always highly musical. Like there could be a band. It's beautiful. Definitely a guitarist at a minimum. It's always beautiful. And so I just thought that was what it was like to be Jewish. I was like, this is a party, okay? It's like the gospel choirs in the Black churches. I was like, oh, we have it too. So then when I moved to New York City, where the conservative movement is effectively dead, it's either you're Reform or Reconstructionist or like modern Orthodox or Orthodox, and it's like Chabad. And they're not singing anything. And definitely there are no women singing. I was like, I hate this. I don't want to go to these services. I can't sing along. Like nothing's going on. So it's a completely different reality that we live in, both not just in the way that we experience Judaism, but also in how we experience day-to-day life. Whereas you may have the fun musical services, I'm on the streets every day where there are plenty of visibly Jewish people. I take the subway to the Upper West, Upper East Side. All I hear is Hebrew all day. And I know that God forbid something happens, there's someone on the street that can help me. And there are plenty of Jewish people around me. Whereas for you, you're probably interacting with a lot of people who are not Jewish or have never met a Jew, or God forbid have like preconceived notions that are negative about Jewish people. So those are kind of our trade-offs and the differences. I do want to say I really miss the musical component of services that exists in conservative synagogues that is just like so much harder to find in New York. And they have the issue with the mics, like they don't want to turn on the mics for Shabbat because like technology. All that is to say is we are in different realities. And where I'm leading to this is around October 7th. How has your family or how has your community experienced October 7th? What do you think? Because as you know, I'm in New York. We experience it very much so. We have a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism out in the streets of New York City, protests, rallies. Like we are living it and have been living it every day. Yeah. Is that the case for you?
Yeah. So if I'm not in a community over the course of Shabbat, over a Shabbaton, I'm here at my house. I don't go out and travel the city a lot, but I have a very big online presence, and I get a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism tossed my way, tremendous amounts. And I'm diligent about delete, block, delete, block, delete, block. As far as I'm concerned, anybody who decides to come in and say something and something that I post or a live that I do for people or anything like that, it should be also a safe place for people to come and gather up, and you have to protect those things and keep them sacred. So I work hard at that, but I spend a lot of time in a lot of different communities all over the country, and I stay connected to those people. So I experience those things in those communities and spending time with people and hearing their stories and all the stuff that they go through. So it's, since before October 7th, the anti-Semitism has been it's something that it's always around. It's always there. And if it's not present, it's lurking and you're on the lookout for it. Having people walk into services and throw money at the rabbi, have people shout things about their beliefs walking down, and we have to have them removed. And October 7th, when that happened, I was in Burlington, Vermont, and I was supposed to do a concert at a synagogue that night. I'm in the Uber heading there, communicating with the rabbi. Look, do you still want to do this? Is this, what are you thinking? I'm here to support y'all. What approach do we want to take? I mean, and everything is just happening. And I remember the Uber driver telling me, hey, I see that you're going to a Jewish place. Are you sure you want to go there? I was like, yeah, that's exactly where I want to go. And I remember the rabbi telling me, we are still going to do this tonight. For anyone who wants to gather up, we are going to gather up. We're going to spend time together as a community. And it was so powerful. And I expected there to be I didn't know how many people were going to be there, but it was standing room only. It was absolutely packed on that night. And the response since then in places is such I think an incredible response that we have as a people is everybody reaching out for each other in such a big way. Places are packed, people gathering up. What can we do we're going to, and then people who are, of course, just outside of those communities that want to be supportive, showing up, filling those spaces. October 7th has been a constant conversation, online, offline, in person, in Torah study groups, in just being with people and spending time with people. It's all the time. I didn't grow up with anti-Semitism. Nobody in my family that I'm aware of was in the Holocaust, right? No one in my family ever spoke ill of the Jewish people. I never heard anything negative about the Jewish people, ever. I never heard anything about the Jewish people, period. And it wasn't until I went through this process that it opened up my mind. It definitely opened up my heart to all of this. And I get people that ask me all the time, are you glad you did it? Are you still glad you did it, knowing what you did? And I remember at the beginning, way before all of this, but I remember people telling me, look, you be aware that when you take this on, you are opening yourself up to something that is awful. At its core, it's horrendously terrible. I heard someone refer one time, they said, you're joining a haunted and hunted people. Is that what you want? And I was like, well, when you find your house, when you find your home, when you find your people, yeah. Not because of that, but I want to stand against that with what I have found to be such a beautiful truth, and those people that have held that door open for so long. And I'll do whatever I can do to always stand there. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else at all. That moment on Saturday morning when we lift up the Torah, right? We lift up the Torah and raise it above our heads. We turn, we face the ark, we lift up the Torah, show everybody in that room what it's about. Everybody gets to see it. And when we do that, not for a second do we say, hey, everybody in here Jewish? We don't ask that question, right? Nobody does. No congregation in the world go, hey, before we lift up the Torah, is everybody Jewish? We don't do that. We just lift it up before we roll it and put it away. But everybody sees it. And that is, I believe so strongly, that is what we do with all of our good deeds, all of our kindness, our thoughtful words and actions, all the good that we put out in the world. We are showing everyone what is on that scroll and who we are. And people have done that for ages and generations. And it's the most beautiful thing. And I'll tell you, the world has no clue what it is to be Jewish. They have no idea. And that's okay, because people only know what they know, right? And it's not any rabbi's job to teach the world what it means to be Jewish. It's our job. It's our job individually to be able to communicate those things. And when someone says, hey, it's one of the things that we're tasked with, right? Being in the grocery store line and someone sees a Star of David or whatever on us, and they're like, oh, you're Jewish. Can I ask you a question? Yes, of course. Go ahead. The more that the world knows that we're part of it alongside everybody, that we're sharing a neighborhood, and that it's okay to find out who we are. And the more accessible that is, I think the better it will be. And it's a great challenge, especially now in the face of so many things that want to stop that. Folks talk about like, oh, anti-Semitism's on the rise. It's been there. It's been there, bubbling and brewing under the surface and waiting. And now it's rearing its head in a huge way. And we have to continue to be exactly who we are. It's a common conversation I'm having every day. And it's a good, important conversation.
Thank you. This is super enlightening for me. And I'm still laughing about the haunted and hunted people. That's one way to put it.
I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, sit down,
What am I, a ghost?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm just imagining all the like phantoms of angry Jewish grandmas and grandpas coming.
Right.
Masha,
Coming out of the walls. Yeah.
get over here.
Yeah.
And you know what? It makes me wonder if through this process, there was anything that you experienced that was difficult for you to fit within a Jewish community. Because unfortunately, the more religious you go, the less accepting and compromising the people are. I didn't know if there are any experiences that you could reflect on, because you're up against a lot as someone who converted.
Yeah. I'm very open about my conversion. A lot of people don't like hearing about that because they're like, don't talk about it. It's taboo. I'm like, for who? They're like, well, it's offensive. And I'm like, but who does it offend? Does it offend you? It sure doesn't offend me. I'll tell you all day. It's the greatest thing next to marrying my wife and having a son. It's the greatest thing I've ever done. And I can't, I'll talk about it all day. Yeah, there's definitely been some really tough moments. And you're right. It's funny. The word religious is such a funny word. I kind of want to take it back a little bit. I believe very strongly in God. I'm definitely a believer. And there's definitely some things I do that, the Orthodox may say, well, that's not Jewish. You can't do that. Therefore, you're not. And certainly because I had a conservative conversion, I'm not Jewish. That was really hard to accept for a little while, even though I was very trained on it, very aware of it. I remember being at an event and a fella came up and asked me if I had fulfilled the mitzvah that day. And I had recently joined the tribe. I was telling everybody, I was so excited. Hey, I'm Jewish. And guess what? And, this guy said, have you fulfilled the mitzvah? And I was like, well, there's a lot of them. What are you talking about? And he goes, have you wrapped? And I said, no, I haven't. And he was like, would you like to? Yeah, that'd be great. So I was wrapping my arm and decides to ask me in the process, is your mother Jewish? I said, no, my mother's definitely not Jewish. And he paused, I said, oh, did you convert? I said, yeah, I did. I said, oh, who's your rabbi? I said, oh, rabbi's right over there. I'm Stuart Vetero. And he starts taking it off my arm and says, I can't help you. There was people at this thing that were watching that then left. And I thought I had just done something horrible and I didn't know what it was. And I had forgotten some things. I remember I went and talked to my rabbi and he was like, he was furious that this person did this. And he was like, the problem's not you, it's me. I'm not seen as a rabbi. And I said, you're the best rabbi I know. And he's like, Joe, I'm the only rabbi you know. I said, well, that's also true. And it was hard. I felt deep, 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 deep shame. And I'll tell you why. I find this is the case for a lot of people who join the tribe. When I do these big talks called Choosing to be Chosen. And a lot of people who come to that, a lot of people who are Jewish, a lot of people who joined the tribe later on, and a lot of people who are going through the process. So it's a big mixed group. The idea that when people come here to this, they've been through some stuff, for some people, horribly traumatic events with religion. They find this opportunity to reconnect with more and with the people that it feels like it's what they've always been looking for, but they have questions and they don't understand some things and they want to know. They come in a very fragile state often. It's very thin. And that's why we were talking earlier about the right person can make all the difference. The wrong person can make someone say, oh, thanks for answering my questions. And they'll never come back again because the last thing they want to do is offend the people. Even after joining the tribe and doing all of that, I still have this awareness that I didn't grow up with this. I don't feel like a guest anymore, but I definitely feel like I was adopted later on and I didn't grow up in this house and I got big elbows and I can be a bull in a china cabinet and I don't want to knock things over that are precious. So I always feel like I have to authentically be me, but I don't want to upset what is, except where we're supposed to question and ask and challenge and things like that. But I always have this awareness when I do that I want to earn this still deeply, deeply, deeply. Try very hard every damn day to earn this as much as I can. And so when things like that do happen, I mean, it hurts to your core. It hurts. I've accepted those differences and I realize that I've accepted that they don't have anything to do with me. There are a lot of things that other people will try to put on you. And at some point you have to go, that sounds like a you thing. And I'm not too concerned about it. People have asked me before, I get rabbis who will reach out and they're very sweet, But they will reach out and they go, I'd love to hear more about your conversion. And I already know why. Like, well, I can tell you, I don't know that you would accept me. Like, oh, okay, thanks for your time. And they're out. And that's fine. That's fine. I went to the wall. I was in Israel for the first time. It was before all this. I was there for 2 weeks. The community brought me out. I did all their music and prayer and everything for a couple of weeks, and we toured all over. And I remember going to the wall, and that was hard. Walking up to it, everybody and their grandmother tells you what you're supposed to feel, and it's going to change your whole everything. And so you take all those expectations. And I kept asking myself the whole time, is this also mine? Look at all these folks who are wrapped to the nines, davening so hard they're going to shake through the floor and like in all their stuff. And here I am, just this guy. Am I good enough for this? Is it also mine? Do I have any right to be here? And I found all I was doing was questioning everything. And I got up to the wall. I couldn't even remember half the things I wanted to say. And I just kept saying thank you and apologizing for no good reason. It was really hard. The acceptance side of it is tough, but most of that has to do with other people and nothing to do with you. I find that God is easy. People can be tough.
Yeah,
sometimes.
This is emotional even for me to hear, because it just like upsets me so much that you felt like you had to apologize. And there are people that are born Jewish and couldn't care less, and they would never show up to the wall and would never say anything, especially now in this, like the most challenging time for Jewish people outside of the Holocaust. To hear someone who cares so much about the community feel apologetic or feel like they have to earn something. Whereas I personally know Jews who completely detest the state of Israel or being Jewish. It just really hurts that it bothers me. I wish it were different.
Thanks.
Of course. And on a brighter note, what would you say your favorite part about being Jewish is?
Wow. I think my favorite part of being Jewish, and there's a lot. There really is. I think it's the sense of, as odd as this may sound, the sense of responsibility for your own life. You are 100% in control of your actions, of what you do with it, what you want to take from it, what you want to add to it, that the relationship is both directly. There's no one between, us and our creator, but there's also no one between us. That responsibility of taking all of these things that we learn, all of these things that both move our heart and challenge our heart and things we disagree with, and going, now, how do we do that out in the world? What does that look like? And that it is on us individually to figure out how we do that. I love that so much. There's a lot of things I love about being Jewish. I could fill books with it. Maybe I'll put a book together. I don't know. But I think the thing that drives so much of it is that sense of responsibility. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at South by Southwest, and we got the band up there. We're just rocking and rolling. It was a Friday night. And I shouted, I said, hey, everybody, it's Friday night. And the bar's like, yeah, it was at a bar. It was absolutely packed. And I said, that means it's Shabbos, Shabbos. I shouted it, the whole bar, Shabbos. Most of them, no clue what they're saying, right? And we ripped into this Shalom Aleichem, and our guitar player's just, killing it on the slide. It was awesome. And I remember afterwards, after the set and everything, I was over at the bar and I was talking to some folks, and this guy comes up and he goes, hey man, was that some Hebrew? I said, it sure was. And he goes, I'm Jewish. And I was like, that's cool. You don't have to whisper that. And so, it's been amazing meeting a wide range of Jewish people, a wide range of people who are part of the family. And I want to say, for all of your Orthodox listeners, I have learned so much and met a lot of beautiful, beautiful folks and a lot of beautiful traditions within Orthodoxy. So what I said earlier is I'm not trying to upset anybody. It's just, that was my experience, and it's been my experience. But I was at a Chili's, and I said, hey, can I get just like a slice of just plain, just whatever kind of bread you got before we eat? We want to do a little blessing. And we had a bunch of friends there, and I remember doing this blessing before we ate, and we were singing it out, and it was a friend of mine who was Cantor, and she said that made me so uncomfortable. And she said it made me think about, I'm hesitant to do anything like that out in public. I think because of the experiences that family has had and their history and all that kind of stuff. And so it's challenging to do this out there. Can I say one more thing? We have the Ve'ahavta, right? Where we find these, words to sign upon your arm and above your eyes. And I always think about it like, kind of like, it's almost like getting dressed, right? As a sign upon your arm and above your eyes. Now it's on the doorposts of your homes and on your gates. It's leading outside, right? It's like you're putting this on through the doorposts of your homes and on your gates, right? And you say them diligently while you're at home and while you are away. Teach them diligently to your children. Why do you do it? Why do you do it that way? Why not just passively? Why not just like, hey, mention it to your kids? You do it diligently so that they will know to do it out there. And not just the verse that's in that scroll, that's in that mezuzah, but that we do all of this out there. And although we have all of these books and all these writings and everything, we have to figure that out for ourselves. How do we do it out there? And it's the hardest thing to figure out how to do, but it's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be a light into the nations and individually do that. And as long as that choice, or people be like, well, I'm not some kind of scholar. I don't know how I'm supposed. It's okay. Whatever you do that you identify with, this is how I represent being Jewish out in the world. Even if it's just through I'm going to be kind to people today. I'm going to help somebody today. I'm going to thank people for the things they do for me. And I'm going to be mindful with whatever it is that you do it with so much intention. And that's how you do it. However that is for you. I think that's really important, especially important right now.
Joe, you're going to make me cry, I swear, because literally yesterday I was thinking about, I'm moving to my own place. Am I going to hang up a mezuzah on the outer door, the one that people can see when they walk by my apartment? Because my apartment is the first when you get out of the elevator. And then on top of that, my building, like you have to get special permission to hang up Ring camera with the webcam. So it was this whole mental gymnastics of, one, do I hang up the mezuzah? And if two, if I do I then ask for permission to hang up a Ring camera in case someone out of spite comes and like rips it off or whatever, tries to harass me about it. And at first I was like, I don't need this headache, even though I like really would like to hang up a mezuzah. And then the other part of me is like, that's what you're saying. Like, we are the light upon the nations. Like, the whole point of the light is for it to be seen. Like, there's no light if it's not outwardly visible.
Right. It's like Hanukkah, right? We put our candles in the window. Yeah. That's going to be tough for folks for a long time.
Everything you said really resonates with me, and it just underscores this desire for pride and this need for Jewish pride being more important than ever now. It echoes what a lot of the speakers on this podcast have said, who refuse to be timid, quiet, shy Jews now or ever. Like, the fact that there's more of an issue now doesn't change their mind whatsoever. So I completely agree. And as we wrap up here, I have a couple more questions for you. One of the things I was really curious about was your Tableside Shabbat Siddur.
It needs revision. I'll say that.
So what is it, and what did you hope to achieve with it?
Yeah, Tableside Shabbat kicked off because of the pandemic. All my gigs got, postponed, and like everybody's. And I was like, well, I want to keep praying with folks. And so I was like, well, I've got all this studio equipment. Let me just turn everything on and we'll just see how it goes. And I did not intend for it to really turn into a thing. I was just going to do some prayers for Shabbat, play some songs that felt like Shabbat, and then, all right, good night, everybody. Have a great, And on a whim, I decided, well, let's do a little prayer for healing. And people started listing names in the chat. And I thought, well, damn it, this is a thing. People have that kind of trust in something. You want to honor that. So I remember telling my wife, I was like, people listed names in the chat. I need to do something with this. And so we made it a little more formal. I put together a Siddur. Look, it's kind of rough. It needs a lot of revision and work, but we wanted there to be something that was accessible for people, that was free for them to just download. And there's others out there, but I was like, well, this is what we typically do. We built out Tableside Shabbat as the thing that I do. When I'm off the road, and I have a Friday night to myself here at the house, I'll do that. And a community has started to, for the last couple of years, it's just built up around it. They call themselves a small town tribe, which is great. And what's so cool is when people pop in, they're like, hey, I'm from so-and-so, or I'm from Australia, or I'm over here from the UK, or and they start, oh, hey, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, we can send you some resources. Oh, it's so good. So they're like, now they're just greeting everybody and holding open the door. And I'm like, this is amazing. So it's really been built up into something. But yeah, that Siddur, some folks helped me put it together, and it's a couple years old. I I really need to revise it quite a bit.
Are there corresponding videos such that people can play your tunes along with the prayers to experience it in Shabbat? Like, can I do that this Friday when I do it?
Oh, absolutely. And you can find, actually, those videos are all archived on our Facebook page. And I have a few things on YouTube. I haven't populated YouTube quite enough, but there's versions of the prayers on there that you can find that I've recorded. Certainly our albums and recorded music, all that stuff is out there, but it's the same stuff I do at Tableside.
That's awesome. And speaking of, how can people connect with you on social media and find out more about your work?
Oh, well, thank you so much for asking. I'm really bad about pitching myself, so I appreciate that. I'm everywhere as at Joe Buchanan Music. You can find me that way on Facebook. You can find me that way on Instagram and on TikTok and on YouTube. And, if I did my job right, if you look up Joe Buchanan, it should be the first thing that comes up on Google if I did it right. And we got a lot of stuff on the website. Yeah. Oh, can I tell you some cool news? So we got accepted by the Texas Country Music Association. So we're now part of that, and just got invited to joined the Recording Academy. So now working with several other Jewish artists who are part of the Recording Academy to create a Jewish music category at the Grammys.
That's so cool. Hold on.
Yeah.
Can you share who the other artists are or no?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's quite a few of them, but folks like Joni Leeds and Sam Glazer and Rabbi Yosef Goldman, and just a kind of a whole cohort of folks who are working with the Academy. And we have to show that there's enough music to be considered a category, and by that, new releases that come out that are eligible, and that there's enough interest in it. So there's going to be quite a bit of new Jewish music coming out. We just finished recording our third album. It's like 15 tracks. It's a really big album. And that will be coming out in several months, but we'll be releasing little snippets here and there. But that'll be part of that kind of process of saying, look at all this Jewish music. We need a category. We've never had it. There's, we've already got Christian, gospel, which is also Christian, and all these other things. But we need a Jewish music category. It's time.
That is really, really cool. I hope you succeed. And
Thank you.
I can already think of so many other Jewish musicians, and even Yiddish music, I feel like should be as part of the genre. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'll stay on the lookout for that. And one day I'll be like, I knew him when.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's very kind.
And last question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest of the podcast. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know podcast?
I'm going to say Rabbi Stuart Federer.
I knew you would say that, Rabbi.
I've met so many people that inspire me, and I'm thinking about all my friends. I'm like, but I was thinking, well, I've sort of teed up him quite a bit, and he is quite a character. And so, yeah, that's who.
Perfect. I can't wait to meet him, and I appreciate the nomination. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you do. And thanks for putting this out there in the world. You do tremendous good with this. And it's a real honor to meet you and to spend time with you. You've been just great to talk to. And thanks for all you do.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.